Joan H from New Jersey. Desire.
She's doing such a great job. Hi, I'm Joan. I'm an addict.
Hi, Joan.
And when I think about, as JoJo was speaking, I was so locked into everything she was saying, different things I could relate to, the things I couldn't relate to. The gift is that I can have compassion, that I can have empathy, that I could have a willingness to be closer to her, whereas in different situations, and people have had such traumatic lives, people pull away from, I can lean in, give from this program. My topic is desire. So I don't want to sound funny or like make jokes or anything, but the only thing that came to my mind is the only thing I had desire for is more. Just more. More of everything. When I was using more, when I wasn't using more, when I was clean, more. Can I have another house, a bigger house, another car, more money? Can I have, my life revolved around more. Thank God for this program. But I've always had an insatiable appetite, which I contribute to the disease of addiction. Because being an addict, there's a void, there's a hole, there's a need to be able to fill that. And I have tried to fill it with every outside thing imaginable. Now, I'll tell you some of the good parts about that. Is I've been an overachiever. I've been able to work successfully because I got to. I need more, right? And so there was some positives to that. But the negative to that is that I was never satisfied. There was never enough. Most people that know me, they're probably saying to themselves, yeah, I could see that. But, once I started really digging into the steps, because the more I obtained, the bigger the void. It never filled. That I knew that not only did, active addiction, I had an insatiable appetite for more, but in recovery. But I knew at a certain point in recovery, and I was about 3 years clean when I first glimpsed it. I had 3 years clean, 13 years clean, 20 years clean. I got crushed. I glimpsed it at 3 years clean. And it wasn't that I wanted to get high. It's that I didn't want to live. And I couldn't bring myself to tell people, like, how do you say, it's not like I'm suicidal, but I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to sit in meetings. I didn't want to talk about myself. I didn't want to get loaded. I just wanted to kind of check out. And at that point, I got another sponsor. And we started working the steps. And the way she explained the first step to me was unlike I had ever heard before. She said I was powerless over the disease of addiction and it made my life unmanageable without the use of drugs. I always thought, I'm powerless over the disease. No shit. I knew that years of using I was powerless. It took me to places I didn't want to go. I did things I didn't want to do. I wound up God knows where. I knew that, but I didn't understand the concept of powerless over the disease of addiction without the use of drugs, with complete abstinence. And what I realized is that it was my thinking. It was that when I tried to control people, places, and events, my life became unmanageable. And that control also came in the form of desire for more. Fill the void. Fill the void. Fill the void. So I started working on the first step, and I knew that it had to do with my thinking. How do I change this? I couldn't. But what I could do, and what I was taught to do, was to surrender to this way of life. Just surrender to this way of life. And in surrendering to this way of life, we're going to continue on with the steps. It didn't say you're going to be married. It didn't say you're going to have a big house, small house. It didn't say what I was going to do for a living. It said I'm going to surrender to this way of life and give up control. So I had to, at that point, believe in some power greater than myself that could restore me to sanity. My power greater than myself was when I sat in a meeting, when I called my sponsor. I would immediately have like restoration. Listen, this is what I'm thinking. Boom. I'd clear it up. It would clear up. There was a power greater than myself in the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous and sponsorship. That was my first glimpse. You know, when I was brought through the steps and she had mentioned the third step to me, I wrote every step. Wrote. Twice, 3 times. Right. One thing I can tell you, desire, no. Willingness, yes. Yes. Why? I never wanted to feel that way again. I never wanted to be clean with a nice life, thinking to myself, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. So I had to align my will with God's will. I never say, okay, whatever you want. I align my will with God's will. And that is to be the best person I can possibly be. Not the best person you can be, or you can be, or you can be, but the best person I can be. With my history, with my background, with my behaviors. And after working that third step, because I had the desire to get better and never wanted, and my sponsor said to me one day, she said, you need to do something for me. And I said, yep. I never not did what she said. I said, yep. She said, you need to take Plan B off the table. I said, okay. I wrote an inventory. I shared the inventory. The best part about that inventory was because for the most of the time that I was reading it, I really felt like I was kind of blacking out and coming to. You know, I'd come back in, come back out, like just emotionally kind of checked out in certain areas. But the one thing that I remember at the end of that inventory is that she shared part of her inventory with me. And there was a moment where she said, me too. And it made everything okay. It was the first time that I was able to share some things that someone said to me too. And it softened the pain and the hurt. Never went away. It's still there. It doesn't go away. It was my life, I lived it. But I have tools now that I could live with that life in a productive way. Right? So in the 6th step, like I said to you, I was about 13 years clean and I was hitting that spot again. So I called Sydney out in California and she said, listen, I want you to write a 6th step again. I said, why? Yeah, we did that. She goes, let's look at it again. So I write the 6th step, never argued. I got on a plane, I flew out to California. Went over my 6th step with Sydney. I got out there, I was about 90 pounds. I thought I looked good. I was skin and bones. I was getting to that place again where I didn't want to do this anymore. And Sydney was a little Jewish old lady. And she was so amazing. And I got to her house and I said, Sydney, look at me. I'm a mess. And she said, that's okay, sweetheart. She said, you're spectacular. I had I felt like such damaged goods, and there was such a path of destruction. The disease will always leave a path of destruction. Not sometimes, not maybe, not always. If you want to gauge if you're in recovery or you're acting out, if you're acting out, there's going to be a path of destruction. If you're in recovery and you're at peace and you're working the steps, there's going to be serenity. Not that difficult. So I went over the 6th step with Sydney, and Raymar was alive at the time, and I was in the guest room. And Raymar bashed the door down, and he came into the room, and I'm laying in bed, and he said to me, he goes, you know what your problem is? I said, not now, Raymar. Okay? Not now. I'm in bad shape, and I'm not in the mood for your shit. He said, you know what your problem is? Everybody knows you, but nobody knows you. And I lifted my head up off the pillow and said, are you done? Get out. I'm in his house. I continued on with the steps. I knew that the defects of character were eating me up. They were eating me up. I was back in that place where I was just unsatisfied with everything. Have you ever felt like just dissatisfied with everything? I'll tell you how the disease works on me. I could walk in my house and go, I love this house. I love that color, that wall, that paint. Spectacular. So glad I did that. A week later, I could walk into the same house and go, what the fuck was I thinking? That's how the disease, it is so tricky and so insidious and so sneaky, and it sneaks in the cracks. That's why we have to be so vigilant. Because I want to be grateful. I want to feel sustained. I want to feel at peace. I want all those things. Feeling those other things because of defects or control, manipulation, right? Perfectionism, all that shit leaves you unsatiable. It's just never enough. We have a disease. And we have a disease that tells us we don't have a disease. And if you want to really take it even a step further, when you get clean, as long as I've been clean, you really don't think you got a disease at some time. I'm good. I'm good. I got my shit together. Until all of a sudden you wake up one day and you can't breathe. I made a list of all the people I had harmed. There was one person I didn't put on the list. My sponsor said, if your recovery depended on it, would you? I said yes. Still have not made an amends to that person. Still that person has not been on the list. But I'm willing. You know, I have, and people that know me know that I have this new spin on the 10th step. Promptly admit when we're wrong. Well, most of us have a hard time with admitting we're wrong because of our sick pride and our sick ego. By the way, that's the only two things we come in this room with. But what if we look at the 10th step in a different way? And we can admit when we're wrong or we injured someone, and we could directly make an amends. But what if we can take that 10th step and spin it to where we make a direct amends to ourselves for the way we talk to ourselves, for the way we treat ourselves, not externally, internally. The feeling of not being good enough, or the shame, or the guilt, or the remorse, or the different fears we have, or different situations we're in and we don't know how to handle, and we shut down, and we can't be authentic, and we can't reach out to someone else because we're too self-centered. And we can't show up for people in our lives because our shit is way too important. What if we can make a direct amends to ourselves for what we do to ourselves in recovery to be the best person we could be? To forgive ourselves for having a disease of addiction that needs to be treated with spiritual principles. Be kind to ourselves. That talk. Change the channel. Immediately make an amends to ourselves. I really like that. And it really works for me. And I saw it through prayer and meditation. I had no problem with that because I wanted peace. I meditate every morning. I meditate every night. It doesn't have to be for 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be for an hour. It could be for 5 minutes. Just quiet the mind. Focus on one thing, one word. And for a long time I would meditate when I went to sleep. Right before I would go to sleep, I would go into a meditation. And my meditation used to be, it's going to be okay. I could cry. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I would just meditate on that until I could find some peace within myself to eventually fall asleep. Everybody that knows me knows I lost my husband 4 years ago. And all of the things that I thought were important are not. Because we spent many, many, many years building another house, taking, when the kids got out of college, when we helped Jordan get his first house, after we do this, after we pay this off, after we get more, after we have more, after our kids have more. Well, guess what? We had plans. When all that shit was done, we had plans. That day never came. Because we were too busy with everything else. So, is all that stuff really important? I don't think so. It doesn't suck. I still have a lot of it. It doesn't suck. Don't get me wrong. I'm not eating beans out of a can. But let's keep things in perspective here. What is the spiritual path? What are the spiritual principles? What life do you desire to have? There's the word. What life do you desire to have? Freedom? Freedom from the disease of addiction with or without the use of drugs. I'm not talking about using drugs. I haven't used drugs in a long time. Freedom? The freedom you want is in the work you refuse to do. The freedom you want is in the work you refuse to do. And you don't have to do it for your husband. You don't have to do it for your job. Do it for you. Do it for you. You know, I'm gonna wind up, but I just want to share this one other the essence of the steps that we have. This program that is so divinely written, and it is so spectacular in its own right. Okay, there is nothing that's left out. Hits every mark, and it hits every mark that will affect every single area of our lives. So why would you settle for less? Why would you settle for crumbs? Why would you just say, it's good enough? When you can have more, and be more, and do more, and love more. And the greatest gift that I've received in recovery is the ability to love. But the hardest gift I received, which is one of my greatest gifts, is the ability to receive love. I didn't know about love and receiving love. I always felt that it was somehow transactional. And I was never able to get completely to the other side of being vulnerable, where someone could really, really hurt me. I always had a little bit of a wall, a little bit of an edge. And, of course, since my husband died, I am very guarded. But I have dug in to vulnerability these last 4 years. That has been a big project of mine, because I felt that I was becoming very, very guarded, and my walls were coming up, and I was shutting people out. And when people would ask me if I was okay, I would say yes when I wasn't. And I would be able to do so many things, okay? My son got married. I could have won an Academy Award for my performance. My son got married without his father. No, that was not easy. But you would have thought that I could have won an academy. I danced the night away. I was the hostess. The wedding was spectacular. Even when it was spectacular, I made it more spectacular. And we need this. And we need this. And then I sat back like this. Wow. But my guts and my heart was ripped to shreds. So I know that there's still work to do. It's a good place to be. I don't ever want to get there. I want to become teachable. I want to become vulnerable. I want to continue on with the steps and this beautiful way of life. And I want to do better. I want to be better. And I want to get better. So thank you for letting me share.